for the moment, Mr. To inspire, because this is a place to do that. Magabongwe Siziba, please welcome to you and your family of Facet. Please know that Gusekaya at Gibbs, which is the Senton branch, the Senton location of the University of Pretoria. Welcome home. Thank you. And then, when you're thinking about protocol, you then have to focus. I'm doing this the wrong way around. I was supposed to start with the minister, but I will end with the minister because it's election year, so I think we can change the order. The shareholders are in charge now. The management needs to account to the shareholders. So I was required to, in the protocol, to acknowledge the president of ABASA. But I was very privileged today. Guys, this book, you need to get this book. It's called Unshackled. I have not read it, so I can't review it just yet. However, what I did read on page 55, amazing how connections work. There are some important, inspiring leaders. There's number one in the room. I would like to acknowledge the former president and founding president of ABASA. For today, Jeff, I'll call you Dr. Jeff van Rooyen. Because as a professor, I can confer titles. And then I also want to acknowledge number 13. This one I won't confer her because I will want, she knows there's an open invitation to do a doctorate. Ms. Ms. Soon to be Tantaswa Fubu. Congratulations, number 13. And of course, number 17. These are number of presidents, all right? Number 17. We've only met, so I have to be very respectful. Ms. Linda Makoma, welcome. And everyone now is talking about the youth in politics, and they like to talk about the youth in their political party system. And they tell us that there are old ideas and new ideas, and when we listen to their new ideas, they sound like old ideas. But the ANC can be very proud of one of its youth leaders who is here today to engage us and address us on important issues of finances of our country. And hopefully, Deputy Minister, you will talk a little bit about the GFRAC, which is confusing to people. And we've heard, obviously, this is the new balancing item in the budget. And because people have a healthy desire to disrespect everything ANC and distrust everything ANC, they're very concerned about this new balancing item. So they think, hey, ANC is cleaning out the cupboards and before it vacates. Now, there's a lot of assumptions in that statement, right? One of the assumptions is, I don't know if you know, this account, this GFRAC account of about 500 billion rand is equivalent to about 8% of our GDP. No other country has such a high proportion of its GDP. Typically, governments run these close to zero. From time to time, it's negative, right? And that's problematic because then a government is to top it up. But to run it at 8% of GDP, put it in context, this line item was not quite zero, it was close to zero in 2012, right? So it means that it was built up over time, and if you don't use it at its height, it can reverse, because it's a book entry. It can reverse if the rand-dollar exchange works in our favor. Right? Very important consideration. So often people think the government is going to be stealing our gold, And maybe sending it to Dubai, who knows. But Minister, I think it's important that we contextualize and educate, because there's a saying that if you want to hide anything from a black man, write it down, hide it in a book. Especially when numbers are concerned. But we want to change that and say, people, we can read and write, and we want to educate. And this is a place for education. And in my welcome remarks, Minister, I also like to think in numbers, just to inspire the young leaders. These are our leaders. These are not our young professionals. These are our leaders. And if you don't know it, we are lost indeed. So young leaders, when some of us joined Gibbs in 2014, just some statistics that I think are relevant to ABASA. To some extent to Facet, given I understand your transformation agenda. There were 2 black African academics that were employed here. So let's say broadly there were 2 black academics on a full-time staff that were employed here. Because if you are an Africanist, you'll know that black means black-colored Indian. So we inclusive of black broadly defined. So even inclusive of that term, black-colored Indian, there were only 2 black people employed here. One of them had a PhD. The other did not. We fast forward to 2024. Out of our 40-odd permanent staff, 47% are black. In the country, I don't know where many of you studied. Typically, whoever taught you at best had a master's degree. In the country, the average PhD of academics is around 61%, which means there are universities that are lower than that and others are higher than that, but on average it's 61%. At the University of Pretoria, by end of 2023, we're sitting at 70%. At the Gibbs campus of the University of Pretoria, we are sitting at 85%. Now, often what they say is that when you are transforming, you are lowering the standards. So let me give you some statistics. Of the 47%, 81% of them have PhDs. All right, so like we raised the standard and we transformed at the same time. Minister, 56% of our academics are female. 50% of our department heads, these are academics, are female. 70% of my executive is female. More than 60% of the professors are female. By the end of this year, 40% of the professors, so you get promoted, you get a PhD, you publish, you get promoted to become a professor, are black. So I'm just trying to say that this is a home for black excellence. And we look forward to continuing our collaboration with ABASA and Facet in driving black excellence. And we say this, I put this up at every forum I speak, because often when you talk about black excellence, colleagues who are not black feel excluded, right? And I suggest that that's unfortunate, because we are not talking about exclusion, we're talking about redress, all right? We're talking about social justice. And if I had a green board, if the stuff here wasn't there, I would put up the equation for compound interest. But you can kind of do the math in your numbers, right? So let's just kind of like do a quick calculation. If as a Masondo, you are earning 1,000 Rand a month for 10 years, and then Usmith is earning an equivalent of 10,000 Rand for your 1,000 Rand a month. and we then calculate the compound growth differential for 10 years. I'm just using 10 years just because the math is doable in our heads, right? Because as Jeff, Dr. Van Rooyen will tell you, we know that simple interest is 10%, and then you add the 1,000, then it's 10%. Whereas compound interest, the first 1,000 is 10%, and the next 1,000, the next 10% is on 1,100, and so forth, right? Which therefore means, in terms of compound privilege, you never catch up, right? Turns out there was a professor at Wits University, the late Professor Merle Lipton, who then writes about wage gaps in this country. And she says, imagine Masondo, for every £1 then that Masondo earned, Linda, they didn't have stats for Abu Mam. For every £1 Masondo earned, Van der Merwe earned £5. And then Fox earned £12. Right? And so what that means, when you add that on a compound basis in terms of educational outcomes, health outcomes, learning outcomes, and all of that, it's near impossible to catch up, right? And this is where, Minister, I want you to reflect, because Van der Merwe did catch up. Apartheid was bad for Afrikaans people, really bad. They never caught up to Smith or Fox, right? But during the last 30 years, Afrikaans people have seen more wealth transfer in their favor than they ever did when they were in control of the laws. If there's the biggest beneficiary as a group to the dividend of freedom, has been the Afrikaans people. You may not like to hear it. Go and speak to Stats SA. They'll give you the numbers, right? So then we need to then reflect on, for ourselves, if we're interested in numbers, if we're interested in transformation, how then, what can we learn about the tactics? If you wish, you can listen to bad music, which makes you angry. And you can wear very colorful clothes and beat people up. Or you can say, no, there's a lesson there. There's a lesson there about, I can't do it in a traditional way, but what is a non-traditional way of really playing catch-up and driving social justice? So we tell these stories to invite all South Africans of all races into the conversation about social justice, and not to alienate anyone. So I'm not alienating Fox, or Van der Merwe, or Van Tonder, Van Rooyen. Not alienated. I am saying, please guys, this is a real problem. Because if we can't solve this, we have no country. If you love your country, if you love your privileges, if you love your Springbok, then you must fall in love with the problems of this country. And the problems of this country is that there are so many people that are excluded from the bargain of 1994. And it is our duty, Minister, to really work together, regardless of the future political outcome. It's a South African problem. It is not a political problem. It's our social problem. It's our social responsibility. Minister, this is what we teach here in this business school. All right? So compound interest is not just something we teach in finance. We teach this in strategy. We teach this in operations. We teach this in social justice programs that we do. And for that, with those words, I welcome you to Gibbs. I encourage our future leaders to be mindful of the value that you have and to invite you to own your agency and to use your agency and to learn from those that were able to hack compound disadvantage to create compound privilege so that we can create compound privilege for all. Thank you very much, Minister. Minister Zondo. Sorry. Thank you very much. No, it's not your time yet. Okay, Minister Masondo. Kathy. I think now, the first time I saw Kathy, she had a bigger budget, FASSET. She was given money by Sunday Times to do amazing work. And she's awesome. And so, but before Kathy comes, I would like to invite Mr. soon-to-be Dr. Siziba to give us a few warm welcomes from FASSET. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Prof, next time we meet, I promise you that proposal will be approved. It's loading. It's loading, it's going to happen. Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance, Deputy David Masondo. I want to play it safe so that I follow right protocols. Professor, you've done the job that I had to do for my greetings. So I will say esteemed panel members, esteemed guests, esteemed youth leaders of the future, and everybody that's around us. Good afternoon, colleagues, so that I don't get into trouble by missing certain portfolios. Speaking here is Makabongwe Siziba. I'm the Chief Information Officer at FASSET. Prof spoke a lot about us. We are in the partnership with all the members that are here. But it's important to mention that our CEO who wanted to be here with us, Ms. Ayanda Mafuleka, she has a business task in London, so she couldn't join us here, but she sent us as a team to come and honor our strategic intentions because we are here as the organization as FASSET. So we are here, we are represented. It's a privilege really to be in this midst because we deem this as a very pivotal discussion, and Prof said a lot of things that I wanted to say, but it's okay. I can mention some few things. Yeah, we are one of 21 sitters, but as FASSET, we contribute a lot in the South African economic landscape. And I think it's evident from what we said earlier on, was the youth leaders that are here, there's partnership between us and ABASA in ensuring that we contribute directly to solve the problems that we understand around the imbalances that we are aware of as the country. And we also believe that a platform of this nature, it creates a desired inclusion through giving a voice to the very same youth of this country. A sample is here in our room, so that we actively participate in national topics and engaging on issues that impact the future of the very same youth. Deputy Minister, ABASA and a partnership with FASSET, we deem it as one of the response to various national imperatives. I mean, we can't say more. I like what the compound issue that you raised here. It's things that we never thought about, but the partnerships that we have, they open our minds so that we contribute directly in solving the problems that we know. But without these agreements, of course, we wouldn't be able to achieve what is intended to be done. And we believe that as part of advancement in South African youth and also the profession of finance and accounting, with the action plans that we have in place, Prof said it differently, but we are saying, as FASSET, we see future ministers and deputy ministers of finance coming from the very same group. This pool of youth are going to be the next ministers and deputy ministers, and we believe in that as FASSET. And it's important that in celebrating our 30 years of democracy, we look back and acknowledge the milestones that we've achieved in emancipating the previously marginalized groups. However, I think we find it more prevalent that we plan ahead to bridge the current gaps, where there's still gaps that takes us back in connecting to us getting to the desired landscape. That is why we as FASSET prioritize youth and women, and we deem that as first and foremost. I mean, there are evident programs that we have as FASSET, and one of them is internships, is bursaries. We have programs in women executive development. Just a few programs I can mention, part of the direct contribution in terms of what we're trying to do. And we believe that in investing in the right, in right issues or where it matters most, it does build a legacy that we'll always remember in our society. And we believe that indirectly or indirectly, it will influence the GDP in years to come because of the contribution that we give to our selected group. To you, Deputy Minister, we thank you for making time to be part of these proceedings. we appreciate the time and the commitment that you made in your mandate to ensure that you come physically and engage with the youth, and also the youth having input, to contribute to us as we try to bridge the gap around these issues of economy of our country. I also want to extend gratitude to our CEO in absentia, Ms. Mafulega, for continuously looking for channels to connecting FASSET, in important narratives. I mean, everywhere CEO make sure that FASSET is known in the country and even globally. Was in London representing us in those platforms, because we want to contribute. We are intentional about what we do as FASSET. And I'm certain that if she was here, of course, she will be delighted to see the smiles coming from the same youth, the contribution, and also the enthusiasm that come with the youth that we have around us. And finally, and I cannot forget to thank ABASA, because we are here and this program is possible because of partnership that we have with them. So we are very thankful for that. And we hope that the action plans that will be uncovered today will reach the relevant spaces, and one day we will link it back and date and mention what has happened in this audience, and also the contribution of all present in the dialogue that we'll be having. I thank you.
A very good evening, everyone. Good evening, everybody. Just making sure that you're all awake and in the room. It's a pleasure for me to be with you tonight as we, of course, have this really crucial conversation. I don't think that in a room like this, I have to paint the picture of what the unemployment crisis is, right? I don't need to tell you the numbers, because we know the numbers. So let me ask you, how many of you know somebody who's unemployed? Okay, sure. Okay, I'm gonna ask all of you to look around the room again. How many of you know somebody who is unemployed? That is nearly this entire room. That means that the rest of my questions were redundant. Because not only do we know people that are unemployed, we know of other people who know people that are unemployed. And if you are in this room and you are employed, you of course are not only part of the privileged few, but you're also seen as the door, the opportunity, the way in that others can use. It seems to be happening more and more, right? If you have a job, more and more people are coming to say, look, if there's an opening in your company, please let me know. Send me a message. It doesn't matter what it is. No mayini, just let me know, so that I can pass it on to my younger sisters this, my aunt's child that. And much of it is centering around the young people in this country. The unfortunate thing of the situation we're facing is that these are the very same young people that we have said, go to school. If you want to make it, go to school. But don't just go to school, do well, right? Because if you go to school, you don't do well, then you only have yourself to blame. But if you go to school, you have to do well so that you can qualify, right? To get some form of higher education. Get a diploma, get a degree, and then you're set. That's the promise that we have given the young people of this country. And they've done exactly that. They've gotten the degrees, they've gotten the diplomas, and somehow they finish, there's no jobs. So what must I do now? No, get another qualification, because now you're underqualified. When we can't quite put you in because you're just underqualified, just get something else. Okay, so now go get another qualification. I apply. Still, no, just add some experience, just 2 weeks, Nyana. Show that you went somewhere, they took you seriously, and this time you're going to get the job. That happens, still nothing. Some young people that are fortunate enough continue to study. We've got, Prof, you would know, young people who are sitting at home with master's degrees, still unable to get a job. Now they're overqualified to be interns. Those young people, as we are in this time lapse of a stagnant economy, have quickly moved from 24 years old to 34 years old. So they no longer are youth. Unfortunately, they are beyond, Minister, the 34.9 mark. They just don't make the cut anymore. And that's the crisis of the conversation that we're having today. So it's not a conversation about numbers. It's a conversation about the people that we know. It's about our relatives, our family members, those that have gone to school, that have gotten the qualification, and somehow they still don't have the opportunity to work. That's the context I'm setting for our conversation tonight. On that note, I'm going to welcome our young minister in the room. I say young conservatively, cautiously. I'm seeing a bit of gray, so I don't know. I don't want to get into trouble. It's an election year. I'm not going to be as bold as the prof here. Dr. David Masondo is a political economist by trade, holds a PhD from New York University. He focused on post-apartheid state industrial policy and investment in the South African automotive industry. He obtained his BA and MA from the University of the Witwatersrand. Dr. Masondo currently serves as the Deputy Minister of Finance, Board Chairperson of the Public Investment Corporation. And you'll be glad to know that he's also published academic papers, so his qualifications weren't just conferred. And and I have it on good authority, at least according to his bio, that these have been peer-reviewed too. On that note, please let's give him a round of applause as he comes to give us the keynote address for tonight.
Thank you. No, thanks, Kathy. Kathy, this is an election year. You know what? The way you dress, the colors you dress, might signify your where you're going on the 29th of. So I'm very impressed about the. Thanks so much for such a wonderful introduction. The president of ABASA, Linda Makoma, you know, this event should have taken place in Feb, and it couldn't take place, and the president was on my neck. And who on this planet can say no to a president? I'm the deputy something. She's a president. And I just hope and pray that one day we'll have a woman president in South Africa coming from this generation. Let me also acknowledge past presidents of ABASA, 17 of them. So let me say the founder, President Jeff Van Rooyen. I don't want to mention others, otherwise 17 of them. And they have no issues about forming other organizations after they've led. They're in peace, right? Unlike somewhere where discipline, commitment, supporting each other, growing the organization. I honestly didn't know that this organization is this old until I saw this old man. We also wrote a book, and as we were sitting there, I was just going through it. I must be frank, I was no longer listening to you, I was now reading your book. I can't wait to go through this book, and I just encourage you, the young ones. I'm no longer young, Kathy. You can see my white hair is coming, but I use it, given the young and old is relative, right? To my mother, may her soul rest in peace, ngumntwana, but ngubaba as well, because I've got kids. So young and old is relative. So I'm still young in relation to what we have in our movement. And I'm not implying anything. But you need experience of the old. And that's why this experience, which is in this book, you've got to read it. Because to Prof's point, sometimes as young people, we start things and we think that these things are new. And yet, the older ones, they've seen it. And it's always important to learn from people who came before you. And the advantage of coming late, including leadership or anywhere, is that if you spend time with those who have traveled the road, you won't, unless you're stupid, you're less likely to repeat the mistakes that they've committed. Yep. So this issue around generational mix, and I'm very impressed by ABASA that you really kept it. And now, President, I saw in that book, all presidents were mentioned, including her. So she just made it. So maybe in your book, others who are going to come after you will also be cited in the book. Let me also greet the executive committee members of ABASA, FASSET, Chief Information Officer. Initially, I thought it's Chief Investment Officer. Makabongwe. Prof. Mtombeni, the Dean of GIPS. And I fully agree with you around transformation. There's no contradiction between being competitive and transforming institutions. Actually, the Springbok, and that's the reason why I will have to leave early, I've been asked to join an awarding ceremony of the Springbok, which is taking place at Randburg. And I felt very bad because this is a national event. I need to be there, but this is also a national event. So I'm caught between the two. And the first premier of the Eastern Cape used to say that he's not Holy Spirit. He can't be everywhere at the same time. So I wish I could. But President, I would really want to suggest that, because I like spending time with young people, hearing their fears, their ambitions. So I would really like to come back. I really want to commit that whatever happens, as the Prof said, after the 29th, I would really want to apply for membership, ABASA, whatever category of membership. I would really like to be part of this organization in whatever form. So my coming today and leaving early doesn't signify anything except that I've got to balance, and I really would have loved to be here until everyone is gone. Because even after the formal conversation, talks, sitting around, listening to people, coming to you, talking, and some of the people, they don't like standing in this big platform and asking questions, making their points. In fact, it's in those safe spaces that you get brilliant ideas, such as from Kamugelo. Thanks for giving us some ideas on taxing Viper. So the fiscus is richer because of just mere idea that you contributed to the nation without any expectation of any gain or return, precisely because you love your country. We could have spent a lot of money consulting just on that issue. And I'm not so sure. But that simply means that you've got an asset. We, as you draw in some of these young people in your consultancy firms, they are making your name. We're looking up to them. And please retain them. And yourself, don't rush and say, Nami, I'm going to have my own consultancy company soon. Stay for longer, gain the necessary experience. Khamkhelo uskajah. Yeah. Take it easy, learn from this institution. Because sometimes as young people, including myself, by the way, I've done a lot of job hopping from this to this one and this one, and I've never been able to get any experience because I've been job hopping from this industry, from this area, and so on. And so, don't blame it on deployment. You know, when Prof was speaking, I was just listening. I wish you could have continued. I said, yo, I'm back in class. And it really shows that you are dealing with real issues. And you're right, that actually transformation and competition, they go simultaneously. The Springbok itself is competitive because there's also black people there. What apartheid actually did, it denied South Africa talent. And it's a point, the book that you were mentioning, or the author that you're mentioning, who talks about wages in apartheid. You also read a book which is called Apartheid and Capitalism. And his argument there is that actually the South African economy was not growing because it denied South Africa skills. Black talent was locked out of the system. And you can see in many industries, brilliant talent, lot of black people participating in different spheres of the economy. My other favorite example is Professor Marwala. He leads a global universities, leader in artificial intelligence, and there's many Marwalas. There's many Tintwalos. So he's right in that book titled Apartheid and Capitalism that actually the lack of transformation denies South Africa an opportunity to grow. So we should not be apologetic about transformation, and when we get into these institutions, we feel like, oh, we are of less value. There's very little that we can contribute. Other people are doing us a favor. We deserve it. And thanks to, they've given you a title now. The founding president, that it, we need to thank you as well for the role that you played under very difficult conditions. I mean, 1985, it was a state of emergency. It was a tough year. Botha was not playing, he was killing, not only in South Africa, but that also penetrated the region. So we really have to thank you that in those dark days, you stood up and say, you know what, let's prefigure the society that we want to build, even under the conditions of apartheid. And for that, I really want to thank you. And you're right, Prof. Actually, there's a book on the success of the Afrikaners. It's called The Rise and the Rise of Afrikaner Tycoons by Ibe Dom Mise. You should read it. And I think it will be important for, in addition to, I feel like I'm prescribing books now, to be read, precisely because I'm in a university, and you know, every time you hear professors speaking, ungena umoya. Ungena umoya, you want to say, yeah. Colleagues and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I really want to thank you once more for inviting me to share my thoughts on the topic titled From Budget to Action discussion. So this topic assumes that many of you have read the budget. The key question is, how do we put it in action? Is it the safe assumption? Yeah. Okay. But I was also asked to talk about how does this budget support small and medium enterprises? How does this budget contribute towards the growth and development of small and medium enterprises? And SMEs, they really play a major role in our economy. And according to the Department of Small Business and Development, SMEs contribute between 52 and 57% of the GDP and employment. The point that Kathy referred to, the question of employment. So if we support SMEs, we will make a huge contribution in dealing with unemployment. Initially, I thought I will talk about how this budget at a macro economic policy level and micro economic policy levels and programs contribute towards building SMEs. So because of time, I will just talk about the macro. And maybe during the discussions, are we going to have questions? Okay, I must find out from the president, Pela. I'll just talk about the macro and say a few things about what we're doing with the electricity situation, what we're doing with the transport logistics, and what business opportunities are there in so far as these industries that we are opening. So the macroeconomic policy stance that we have taken is that it is important for us, in order to grow this economy, to have a macroeconomic framework that support low and stable inflation and predictable exchange rates. And why are these important? In life, we all want stability and predictability. You don't want tomorrow, just as a consumer, as a household, that the price of bread is 20 rand today, tomorrow it's 100 rand, the other day, the price is just unstable. You can't plan. Similarly, if you're in business, it's the same thing. You want stability, you want predictability, and of course, low inflation doesn't mean that prices do not go up. They do, but they must go up at a reasonable level, at a predictable level, unlike in other jurisdictions that I should not mention, for fear of breaking diplomatic protocols, that you've got prices moving up and down and money losing value. It's very difficult to operate in that environment. Whether you're a SME or big business, you can't operate in that environment. You interact with the rest of the world. You buy things from the world, you sell things to the world, and you use your national currency. And if it's unstable and all that, it's very difficult for you to basically plan. So it's important, therefore, and that's why in this budget, we've said that we really need to have a macroeconomic policy framework that supports low and stable prices and predictable exchange rates for the reasons that I've just mentioned now. The second issue, we said it's important for us to deal with the public debt. Our debt, to put it in numbers, is 5 trillion. It's very big. Now, maybe before I come to how, like action now, how we are addressing this public debt, there's nothing wrong in having any debt. The question is, can you pay it? The context of the public debt is the economy growing at the rate at which the sovereign can pay that debt. And if the economy is not growing to service that debt, you're getting into trouble. The second thing, you're borrowing for what? Are you borrowing for consumption or for investment? So we said, look, we really have to put our debt on sustainable level. Because if your debt is not sustainable, you're gonna fail to pay your obligations. Even paying for health, education which is very important in supporting the youth to get into different careers, which is very important also to support SMEs through grants and affordable loans. So we said we've got to do something about this debt. And part of dealing with this debt, we said we've got to cut on certain expenditure because it doesn't make sense for you to continue spending and yet the revenue is going down. So we said there are certain areas where we've got to cut, and we are cutting. But there are certain areas where we're going to increase expenditure on the labor-intensive departments. The police, to enable us to deal with crime, GBV and femicide, to enable us, because crime has become an economic issue. The infrastructure is being destroyed day and night, and it affects our ability to grow our economy, and thus setting the necessary conditions to deal with unemployment as well as poverty. So, GFREC, which is Gold Foreign and Exchange Reserve Account. And as Prof was saying, that account, we've got 500 billion rands. So we said, okay, let's take part of it towards the debt, 150 billion towards the debt. For the reasons that we've got to put our debt on sustainable levels. And if you reduce your debt, you're also reducing the debt service costs. Because our debt service costs now, we're spending 320 billion rands per year on debt service costs. It's a budget which is bigger than education or health. So can you imagine if that amount, we were using it to basically sort out education, health, and so on and so on. And of course, we accumulated this debt precisely because, and we admit, we're the first ones to admit that the state-owned entities were badly managed, and we kept on recapitalizing them, including SAA, which is in the news now. And with this deal collapsing, I don't know the details behind that, but we're hoping that at least we found a solution to reduce the dependence of state-owned entities on the fiscus. And I must also say that the growth of this debt, and I'm not trying to be political against this party which has been formed somewhere in KZN, this debt got accumulated in that period, during the state capture period. That is when it grew. That is where it really grew in a significant way. So all what we're doing, we're basically trying to deal with the legacy of the state capture as well. So this debt cannot, its accumulation, its growth, cannot be delinked from that period of state capture. So we're trying to clean ourselves, to sort ourselves. We're reforming, we're renewing ourselves. And in that renewal, because renewal is like any other reform that you take. And reforms, whether it's in the economy, it upsets certain interests. It upsets certain rents. And some people are going to fight back. So we're not surprised why some people, like the former president, and not your president, of the ANC has decided to form his own thing, which we're challenging, by the way, in terms of the name. He can use any other name, but not Umkhonto Wesizwe. So this debt, we said, we can't use, because some people were saying, no, take that, the entire amount to consumption, it's election year. We said, no, we're responsible. We don't want to be like apartheid, which in the late 80s accumulated debt, the debt stock increased significantly, and the ANC government inherited a debt. We said, look, we've got to be responsible. Just because we want to win votes, we can't just go on a spending spree. We need to be responsible. So let's take part of this 500 billion towards servicing this debt. So let me quickly move towards what we're doing about, because like I said, at some point I was going to talk about what we're doing about paying our SMEs on time, because that's one of the issues. We're not doing very well as government in paying SMEs on time, because in terms of the law, we're supposed to pay SMEs within 30 days, and we spend almost 1 trillion as government procuring goods and services from entrepreneurs, but we don't pay them within the prescribed time. And there's huge consequences for failure to pay SMEs on time. Late payments generate cash flow problems, which also make it difficult for SMEs to honor their financial obligations, strained relations with suppliers and other people within the system in which you operate. And you are forced to borrow to meet sometimes your contractual obligations. And debt is not for free. You've got to pay interest. So there are huge consequences in this regard. And as at the end, for failure, that action by that bureaucrat to do the payment on time means that we're undermining the economic growth and expansion opportunities, because you can't invest as a small business in new equipment, your resources are depleted. You can't even invest in marketing to grow your business and so on, because you are not basically paid on time. So we know what the problems are insofar as the government's inability to pay on time. This includes corruption, let's face it. There's someone, I won't mention his or her name so that I don't reveal the gender. This fellow, he was in the supply chain. They wanted to promote him. He said, no, grand. Little did we know that that position enables him to generate good rents. He sits there. For him to fast-track your payment and all that, you've got to pay. So we got surprised. Hey, man, this guy, we're all human beings. We've got a material interest in growing in companies, in government. But this chap, I never understood why until it was revealed by the entrepreneurs themselves. Because I think this corruption is not only government doing it, there are people outside who are working together with these officials who perpetuate the culture, basically. So we really have to do something ourselves as SMEs to deal decisively with this culture. Systems that we have, some of them are archaic, and I would really, really appeal that ABASA, please do join government. Let government be your employer of choice. There is no way in which government will be fixed by you shouting from outside. You've got to come in and fight. It's not always easy, but you've got to come in and fight, because if we don't fix government, we don't fix the state, all of us are going to suffer. Criminals will take over these institutions, repurpose them for other things, as we see in other metros and municipalities. I won't mention them, you know them. And I don't deny that even in my own party, there are people who are criminals, because this is a big movement, but it can only be fixed by credible people like you, professionals who come in. You can join whatever party you want. Of course, I'll speak for that come to the ANC in your numbers, for all sorts of reasons. Because if professionals are not politically involved, this liberation that we get today, that we're enjoying, it was professionals, the founders of the ANC. Piklika Seme studied Columbia University, Bo Mandela, there were lawyers, Ruth First, and so on and so on. It was professionals who said, in as much as we, in fact, under apartheid, it was impossible for them to pursue their careers, they had to say, let's fix this system, because we should be like, a rabbit. I grew up in the countryside. Rabbit, when it goes to get water, drink water in the river, it does analyze the environment. I don't know, dogs or hunters or lions and all that. And when it has analyzed the environment properly, it goes in to drink the water. So you can't be a professional who's narrowly focusing on the professional. It's important for you to focus on your profession, but be concerned about what's happening around you. Get involved. Do something about this. Be an active citizen. Get involved, sort out issues, speak out, protest, and so on and so on. Because where there's no struggle, there's no progress. And struggles come about because there's individuals get involved in organizations and fight. So I would really appeal that even this corruption, our inability to pay on time, we've got to sort these things. We can't sort them just through putting systems, important as they are, but we also want active citizens who will impose this culture of ethical behavior in our own state system. President, there's a lot I wanted to talk about. I'm really worried about time. And I want to talk about electricity, what we're doing on energy. But one thing I really, really appreciate that we've basically done was to liberalize the energy sector. That the monopoly of Eskom must come to an end, and is coming to an end. Because this we have seen, it has generated huge systemic risks. We spend so much time in fixing Eskom instead of fixing the energy problem, because the two are not the same. So we said, let's allow the private sector to also participate in the generation of energy. And there's a lot of energy that has been generated, particularly solar energy, by the private sector. The Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, Western Cape. And the key issue is how to get that energy into the grid. And we need almost 14,000 kilometer transmission infrastructure to get that energy onto the grid, because our energy source was coal, largely concentrated in Mpumalanga. So the transmission network had no relationship with the Northern Cape, which is generating a lot of energy for us after the liberalization of the energy sector. We're going to need a lot of money to invest in the transmission infrastructure. There's different figures that are being thrown around. Some say 300 billion, some say 350 billion. I said, I wish that debt service cost could be channeled towards this kind of infrastructure. Will be mitigating and dealing with the problem of energy that we have. But what we've also said is that it's important to reduce the cost of investment in energy for households as well as businesses. And it's for this reason that we've reduced the tax liability for businesses that invest in solar, for households that invest in solar. And we've also put together energy bounce back loan guarantee scheme to support SMEs that are facing, of course, many of them are facing the challenge of energy, but SMEs that are interested in investing in solar energy in this period we are going through. And your readers, I can't read on your behalf, all that information, it's on our website, and we expect you to shed light to more people who are either ignorant of this support that we're providing to SMEs, or some people who are very knowledgeable, but they can't read, they can't write, particularly English, but they're very bright in terms of ideas. So we expect you to partner with those people in the township, in rural areas who are unemployed, but they've got ideas on how they can deal with unemployment. You know, it's so, to Kathy's point, you know, township, okay, I also partly grew up in Thokoza, so I'm a son of a migrant worker. My father had a house here, Limpopo, you know, the migrant workers system. So I grew up in Thokoza, Mkwai Street as well. When we were growing up, weekends, townships, during the week, when we're coming back from schools, there will be very few people. But today, and on weekends, then you'll have a lot of people in the township. And I told you about the rate of unemployment. Today, you go to a township, during the week, weekend is the same. Young people, they're in corners, they are nyaupe, drugs. The 350 is just a temporary measure. It's like Jifreka. It's a temporary revenue measure. You need to grow your economy. That's the best way of dealing with your debt. That's why you need to support SMEs. You've got to support businesses, create a conducive environment for businesses to invest in the economy, because you all know, Economics 101, GDP is the function C plus I, G, X minus M, and that I is about investment. And you cannot grow your economy without investing. And of course, you've got to export your, whatever you're producing, you've got to interact with the rest of the world. And that is why, again, we said Transnet can't be a monopoly. On the rail, we've got to liberalize, and we have, from the point of view of policy, that you need third-party access on the rail. It's like N1 to Limpopo. It's not only this bus company owned by PRASA that is on the road, city to city. You've got Greyhound and all that. But that road, yes, belongs to the state. We maintain it, we concession it. So why is not the same with rail? We should be saying, those who can afford, let them come and transport goods on our rail infrastructure from here to Durban, the auto sector, the Ford, it's in Pretoria, They've got to get their manufactured cars to the ports. It's not functioning well. And Transnet, because it's a monopoly as well, inefficiencies are many, there's no competition. So we said we need to open up this in order for us to grow the economy. And we do all these issues to support SMEs so that SMEs, and for me, it's not a question of small business and big business. It's not the choice between big business and small businesses. It's about the articulation between the two. What is the connection between big business and small businesses? In the value chain, to what extent are big companies, take BMW as an example, they've got components. Who is supplying them? Those components. Because the growth of some of these countries, East Asia, the Asian tigers as we know them, the chaebols, there was a nice articulation, these big companies, Samsungs of this world and all that, they had to say, in the value chain, how do we work with small businesses to make sure that the components that we need, the things that we need for us to grow this big conglomerate, we get them from the small businesses. So that partnership between big business and small business is one of the things that SMEs need to place on the agenda of big business and say, we can't only say, government, we expect you to do the following things. Big business should also come to the party. And I worry in many instances when we go to NEDLEC, because this voice of small business is muted, if not absent. And we've got to think also about the institutional makeup of how we negotiate policies, debate policies in some of those platforms. Because, as I said, the voice of small business is almost absent. No one is putting an agenda and say, what about small businesses? Labor has a voice, big business has a voice, we've got a voice, community, which is an amorphous category, because all of us will belong to a community. Sonke belong to Sanko, political, sabahlali, all of us. So we really need also to think through, and I think ABASA, you've got a platform, you should bring brilliant ideas on some of these issues that we're facing. I thank you very much for inviting me, President. Next time, I will comply on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Minister Masondo. I'm going to invite the ABASA president to please come up just to give a couple of remarks before we get into the next part of our program.
Thank you very much. Mine are not going to be long because I'm also trying to cater for the fact that the DM does have to leave. And because we're big staunch supporters of the Springboks, we will allow him to leave. And we will also take the note that you want to come back. And I want to tell all my members here that when I was at the ABSA event, which you honored before ours, you did indicate that in me being on your neck, you prioritize others because you are a patron of ABSA, and maybe you must consider making a patron of ABASA. So I don't want to get into trouble making decisions that are that big. But I do want to say that, DM, in our invitation to you, we did say that when you speak, we do listen. And I think 2 years ago, we were on an online platform discussing the budget. And the lessons you gave and left with us was that we must not wait for a budget speech to talk about the fiscal of the country and what we're doing to contribute towards what you, at the end of the day, have to do. We must have continuous engagements. And therefore, we were saying, and in the approach to even this program, and I know Facet was like, let's park this. And I said, no, because the DM said, we need to be engaging beyond the budget. So I think if you are going to be the patron, and you don't know what's going to happen after May Day, but to say for this particular initiative, which we have partnered with Facet on, and Facet, maybe you can then give the nod for that the DM becomes the patron of this particular initiative, where we go beyond the budget and around the actions we must take in our sector to make sure that we're making a meaningful impact. So for that, you are the patron for this project. DM, I'm not going to keep you for long, but I also want to just acknowledge the fact that we have so many stakeholders here that as you speak, I'm saying as ABASA, we are connecting the dots. We have organizations like MESA that have given you ideas around vaping and that you must tax people. And we're also going to announce later, you won't be here, but you will know that we're individuals that have come in from our internship program and submitted to your office. And we appreciate the fact that you have read those submissions for you to see some of the comments that come from ABASA. And we'll continue to encourage active citizenry, because it's not about which political parties we are aligned to. It is about the fact that this is our country. And whether we're accountants who see ourselves as privileged, whether we're CAs, RGAs, SIPA members, or all these organizations that are here, but we are citizens of this country, and we're human beings that have a voice and a right to what happens in our country. So DM, thank you for honoring this, and thank you for being the patron of this particular initiative where we take budget into action. I'd like to thank you. I think we have a little gift for you. I think we checked the parameters of your disclosure, and we've made sure we've stayed within it. So viewer or Tanda, if you can just come up and
All right, thank you for that. I think Mr. Masondo, you must be grateful that you've got the Springboks, because I was going to ask Professor Mtombi for an expository on that particular keynote to give us some of his views. Your excuse, you may leave. It's okay. To continue with the second part of our program, and I think this is really where we'll have an opportunity to get into the nub of the matter. There's some issues that the Deputy Minister touched on, but really in very broad strokes. But I think these are at the heart of what makes it difficult for SMMEs to pull themselves beyond where they are. So you're talking about, I mean, he highlighted the key issues, at least in his view: electricity, transport, logistics. Where do some of the opportunities lie? Just on the issue of electricity alone, how many businesses have had to shut their doors because they cannot keep up with the costs of doing business? And that is not an out there issue. It's an issue that if you have a small business, it affects you. You're operating in a mall. Sometimes the generator comes on, sometimes it doesn't come on. So you have to get your own backup power. That's 100,000 rand that you didn't budget for, that you just actually don't have. And so now you risk, do I continue, do I close? And unfortunately, the reality, especially for so many SMMEs, is that they've simply had to shut their doors because they can't keep up with the rising costs. Let me invite then our next group of panelists that are going to come to the front to be part of this conversation. I'm going to ask Ngumisa Makungwana to come forward. Herbert Monadira and Tembelani Mapanga. Please join me in the front. establishing public and private partnerships to support efforts around reducing graduate unemployment. So it suggests, by virtue of the theme, that this is not just a government problem, but it's also not just a private sector problem. So when we contextualize what the key issues that are leading to this crisis of unemployment from an industry perspective are, Herbert, I'll start with you because you're closest to me.
Thank you.
On this end of the room. When you contextualize what is going wrong in industry that is allowing and enabling this kind of environment to exist, how would you describe the problem?
So thank you, but let me start by recognizing the leadership in this room and the opportunity granted to me to really be part of this discussion. The issues that obviously emanate and resulting in unemployment of graduates, for me it's a systemic issue, and that comes with a number of issues. And obviously stemming from the kind of education and the kind of choices of careers that, in actual fact, we did not really have much information about, that's first. But also it's really around how do we begin to understand, in actual fact, the key issues that drive progress in this country. Because what we have chosen in a number of instances are the issues that are not going to drive key economic activities. And that for me, it's one of the missing points that we have not really cared to really consider deeply in order to reverse the issues of graduate unemployment.
Numisa, how would you contextualize the problem?
Thanks, Kathy. Good evening, everyone. So I think the main problem, or is the fact that we actually haven't really gone and done a root cause analysis to actually say what's causing. For example, the SMEs, I think in your opening remarks you mentioned, they play a vital role in growing the economy, in giving jobs, and so forth. But what you identify, I think in the stats essay, about 1,600 SMEs last year alone were closed. But there's no study being done. Why are they being closed? What can be done to actually assist them and identify where are the pain points that are resulting in them not growing in the economy? So we've got all these stats, but we're not actually finding the real root causes. As a result, we're just addressing the surface, but we're not going into the deeper core of the problems that we have as a country. So that's how I contextualize the problems, to say, because now these SMEs would have offered opportunities to these graduates, they're unable to. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks. Tembelani?
I think I agree with the colleagues. Good evening, everyone. I agree with the colleagues, Kathy. I think we are not producing enough opportunities as an economy to take whatever we are producing from our universities. Now, even when we produce good qualities in certain sectors of our economy, but when you go to that specific sector and you look at the numbers vis-a-vis the demand out there of young people, you find that many are struggling. Even in the financial services sector, you will find, yes, chartered accountants will say, yes, we are in shortage, and if you graduate, you will get a job tomorrow. But you look at the sector itself holistically, you will find that there are many graduates that are sitting at home, always hoping that there will be that job. And you find some of them working in the retail shops. Then they start asking the question. I mean, I was listening on, I think it was sometime last year, somebody was interviewing a young person from KZN. And this young man says, I am 29 years old. I have done everything right. I've gone to school. I have performed well. But the only jobs I've secured is work for ShopRite down the road. I'm now 29 years old and I do not see the future. I'm told that I must go and do my honors, but to what end? So we are not producing enough quality jobs to consume the same. I mean, you look at TVET colleges. I visit them quite a lot lately. You go to TVET college in this town. You look at the municipal offices up the road. You go to their website and you look at the jobs that they have advertised. There is no position that has got a minimum requirement for a student that they are producing down the road. So you are producing TVET qualifications that you do not consume. So who's going to absorb those young people? Nobody, because you are not consuming your own products. So there is a mind shift that is needed. I don't know which level, I don't know by whom, but at some stage we need to be saying what type of jobs are we able to create for which sectors and what are the minimum requirements. There needs to be a policy decision somewhere. I will make an example. You look at we've got enterprise development initiatives where we are saying we're supporting SMEs, we're supporting cooperatives and. The same cooperative, when it goes to the municipality to say, can we clean your roads? They will have to go through so many hoops because they will then have to compete with a big organization to clean their offices. So there is a need for us to take a step back to say if we are going to be deliberate about addressing youth unemployment, how are we going to do it? You've got CIDB doing some work there, but how do we link in real terms on the ground opportunities that will create jobs so that we can consume what we produce?
A lot of the examples that you were using were examples that speak to part of what's happening in the public sector. What's happening in the private sector?
I think one of the things that I would touch base, based on what you said, an issue around mentality needs, around how we see ourselves, I think it really needs to change. We are trapped into the space where we think that we are created to work for somebody else. We have not really moved to a point where we think that with the knowledge that I've acquired and other skills that I can acquire, coupled with some coaching, I can do something for myself in order to advance my dream and really become that SME that can actually produce more. But the biggest issue that we find, Kathy, and I must hasten to mention that, is that because of that mentality, you have an employee mentality who now is dressed up as an entrepreneur, who expects that at a certain time in the month, I'll be getting an X amount of money. And that's why you see a number of SMEs dying throughout the line, because we've really not dealt with thinking like an entrepreneur, with changing the mindset of really getting a paycheck on the 15th and the 20th. There are issues of skills as well that really needs to be addressed, and particularly for a number of SMEs. Skills like such as your financial management, understanding your market, how do you sell your particular products, and how do you close your deals? Because I've met a number of people that are not necessarily accountants or business management students, but who are in the business of either running a particular business on the sideline, but their businesses fail on the basis that there are crucial skills and they lack coaching. And you look at this room, You look at the number of people, the resources that we have at our disposal that we have failed to tap into to really get enough skills and the coaching for our own businesses. And I think it's that mindset that bothers me a lot, that not everyone is really made to work and to go and get, a salary at the end of the month. How do we change that mindset to begin to start thinking like an entrepreneur, but also how do we tap into the available resources that is currently available here to make our businesses run? Also, how do we then tap into spaces of joint venturing? How do we then identify those opportunities where we can actually get into a particular environment and bid, for instance, let me use Bidvest. How do we then get to Bidvest and begin to have conversation that seeks to say, this is the contract that you have. How do I help you? Because you cannot, and by all means, begin to run your businesses as if you understand all core aspects of what you're running. We specialize in other things. And how do you then tap into those avenues? How do you then find opportunities, go out there? In actual fact, I like the word that is used mainly in business development, and it's really called the hunter. How do you begin to hunt as an SME for the opportunities that are out there in order to grow your business to where it should be?
I've got a number of things that are going through my mind right now.
I like that.
Number one, when we say that perhaps the issue is a mindset issue and that people are not approaching entrepreneurship from the mindset that we need to, look at the size of our informal economy and what's happening there. South Africans are very creative. They run those businesses on intuition. The mamas that we have, the gogos that we have on the street corners, they don't know anything about what you as CAs go to school for, pass your CTAs, and yet they've been running those businesses for years. But we say they're informal, so we pay no attention to them. And then we expect that those that are in the informal economy must formalize, and there's a certain protocol that they must go through. But nobody bothers taking them through the journey. We're not meeting people where they are. We want them to meet us where the system is. How does that solve the problem? Because the reality is, if you go to our townships, if you go to our informal settlements, there's business happening everywhere in this country. It's just not happening in the formal sector and in a way that perhaps a Bidvest would be able to appreciate. If you say, well, you know what, ne? I don't know much about what your requirements on paper are. I just know that I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've been doing it for 10 years. And if you give me a try, I promise I will continue to do it for the next 10 years.
You're quite right, Kathy. You know, you have what we perhaps would call the missing middle, and what we would call the unbankable, quadrant. But largely what you look at around the informal market, and it has to be a desire, and that's my submission, of wanting to take your business from one space to the other, because largely you find that it is a business that is hand to mouth, more than the desire to really want to employ 2 or 3 or 4 people. Yes, indeed, there is an appetite to really help in terms of putting systems in that particular side. And I think the Lesaka technology is one of those that really zoom into the unbankable market and those people that literally they've been in business for long. But if you take it, because SMEs, again, this is one of the things that we need to be aware of. They are quite different and they fall in different quadrants themselves. And you find that even those that are new entrants are not the same as the ones that are actually at an excelling level. And there are different problems in every quadrant. Indeed, I'm of the view that a system needs to be devised to really deal with the missing middle. But mostly what I tend to see is that the missing middle is not a you know, in a quadrant that says I need to be employing 2 or 3 people, but rather what comes and what I spend on a day-to-day basis.
All right. Ngumisa?
Maybe- Sorry,
Sure.
if maybe I can add on maybe your question to say, if you look in the informal sector, informal economy, if I can call
Yeah.
it like that. So there was actually, I think, a study that was done in University of Forte, where they said, you know, government has got a lot of initiatives for SMEs, but somehow we are still failing as SMEs. Why is that? And in that study, they actually proposed a framework that I think that speaks to your question, to say there must be, you first look at the needs of the SME. What does the
Correct.
SME need?
Correct.
Because now you can come with a lot of initiatives, but as I said, it's not addressing your need as an SME. So you look at, this is the needs, what then role can private sector play in those needs? What role can public sector play? Because you find that majority of the initiative or the support mainly comes from the public sector. So what role then can the public sector, private sector also play in addressing those needs? And there's then a synergy, and you are not just throwing in initiatives that are actually not addressing the problem. And then now you also need to assess it, because you can't always be just throwing initiatives. So there needs to be an assessment to say, are you making a difference in the SME? Do you see growth in the SME? Is there still gaps that needs to be addressed? So there also needs to be a constant, like we auditors, we like risk, we address the risk. And then you go back and check, has that risk been addressed? And that's what's missing as SMEs. But majority is not addressing. So even if you think of the interns in the room, so FASSET plays a very big role in that. And I mean, it's a very remarkable program that they have in supporting unemployment. But to Tembelani's point, it's a 1-year program. So once I'm done with 1 year, I'm now on the market, I want a job. Like, no, we need the minimum of 3 years. So now, how do we make those initiatives be intentional in addressing unemployment?
Yeah.
And if, for example, my thinking is you extend the 1 year, you make it maybe a 2-year or 3-year internship or program. And in that program, you actually develop the person. So you develop the person to be a fully rounded person. Also, if you look of a year, it's a very short time. There's 2 months that we're not really working, December and January. There's also about 3 months to get into it. So there's 3 months that you've lost. There's about 5 months that you've actually lost. So the actual work experience that you're getting is very limited. And then you get to the market, you are not employable because you don't have the experience, right? But now if you were to change it and make it a 3-year, and you also formalize it, so it must be structured to say, these are the competencies that you must have, well, this is what the economy needs, and they will become employable. Once they're employable, it then increases the tax base, because now you can also tax them. So then in that way, we're actually able to get revenue as a country, and the economy is increasing. Because every year there's thousands of graduates that are being produced. So if you've got a systematic way, an organized way of actually making sure that you transfer these graduates to taxpayers, they could be individual taxpayers, or they could actually be entrepreneurs as well.
Sure.
And to the point of, to say it's a mindset change, so in that root cause analysis or understanding why are entrepreneurs failing, ABASA also has a role there to play, to say, what can they do to support, so they've got a business forum, what can they do to support the SMEs? Because there's a lot of people within that forum that have got the skill that can actually, I think in the paper they call it plow back. So as an SME, you're actually plowing it back, and you're actually supporting and actually developing the other SMEs, which is for the better good for the economy.
Sure. Tembelani?
Yeah, I agree totally with the colleagues. I was invited to a conference 2 years ago in Cape Town. And there was this young man, looked 28, 29 years old, somewhere in the Eastern Cape, but now staying in Kailija in Cape Town. He presented his business. He said, I've created a platform to enable SMEs in my township. In 2 years that I've been running my business, Year one, I made close to nothing. But year two, the amount of business that went through my platform, where I'm now enabling umama or begade thengisa ispaza shop. Now umama uyakwazi ukuthengisa airtime. Uyakwazi ukuthengisa amatikiti ebhasi. She can. I've even moved her now to one level higher. Now she can sell cell phones. She doesn't need to invest anything. All I go to her, I give her a phone. And this phone has got everything you need, ma. If somebody says, I want to buy airtime, you sell airtime. If somebody wants to buy a ticket, anything you can do is there. Within 1 year, that young man generated 15 million rand worth of business in Kailija. I called him last year. I said, well, middle of the year. I said, how much? He says, I'm sitting on 21 million and I'm on month 6.
Sure.
And I don't know what's going to happen. I met him a few weeks ago in Cape Town. And he says, now I've moved to a level where now you can buy groceries for your mother in Kailija, kule phone yam, and it gets delivered doorstep yard. And he says, I'm doing all of this in Kailija. I haven't moved to any other township. Now, these are initiatives that we need to go out there and find them. Because when we find them, we're able to inject. Unfortunately, when I pitched this business to ECDC, Eastern Cape Development Corporation, ECDC said, the board said we want that technology to be rolled out so that we can enable youth businesses in the Eastern Cape. Now, all of a sudden, young people can start doing this. And there's an organization called FAO. We're in a meeting with them, and they heard about this. They said, we have just trained animal health technicians, but our animal health technicians are expecting to be employed. But if we can put them on your platform, now they can become health technicians in villages in the Eastern Cape and sell their services. Now I can sit in Johannesburg and place an order, go and do maintenance of my chickens, and I don't have to be there because this platform allows us to do. So we are looking at saying, can we use, CEO says, Uberize. He says, Uberize everything, because when you Uberize everything, you are improving access. But you are creating, now that would have had to jump into 2 taxis into town. Now I can sit on a phone and place an order and things move. We are in that stage where everybody has got a smartphone. Why can't we tap into it? So these are some of the opportunities that we can tap into and enable SMEs to become more efficient. Those that are doing it, now you can now give these tools to young people and they can start running their own businesses.
All right, thank you for those contributions. I'm going to open this conversation up to the rest of the House in terms of contributions and questions. And again, to come back to tonight's theme, it's about what are the partnerships between the public and the private sector that need to take place in order to support SMEs, because we believe that it's through supporting SMEs that we can advance the employment of people, in particular those that already have some kind of qualification. So I think that is as much a question to those who are in private business too, because the question is then, what is it that would make you give opportunities to SMEs? What is the kind of partnership that you believe would make it worthwhile to enter into with the public sector to deal with this problem that we're discussing today? So you can just raise your hand. I think I'll start with the right side of the room, at least my right side. You can just raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you. If you can please just introduce your name, your surname, and perhaps even the organization you are representing if you feel comfortable. Otherwise, you're more than welcome just to keep it there. So show of hands, this side of the room. Questions, contributions. Remember, we are in an institution of higher learning. So I expect contributions across the board. Otherwise, it's zero for everybody. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tumelo Mahusi, And I'm part of the BBC, Vice President of the BBC is here, and the President of ABASA. And I am from Bahaka, auditors. Just a quick one, right? And I think it's stemming from what the Deputy Minister also spoke to with regards, and we're seeing the country is moving towards public-private partnerships. That's where we're going. 100%, we are 100% in there. For me, it's always with those agreements that we're going to have from whether ESCOM, whether Transnet, for me, is what are the pillars that needs to be there? And I think with solving all the issues, including unemployment, what are the pillars that we're thinking about? Because we don't want to get to a situation where we get a Gupta sort of another level, you know, trying to create another level of Guptaism in the country. So what are the pillars that need to be out there from a fundamental point of view for us to actually enter into this agreement, whatever they are?
And I think perhaps just to add to the point that you're making there, is that in these public-private partnerships, who are these private players that are part of the agreements? Because by and large, you still have what are predominantly black-owned businesses complaining about being marginalized, whether it's construction. I won't talk about auditing because we're at an auditing event, but so I'll talk about the other sectors that are getting it wrong. But it's a very important point. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Faith Ngwenya. I'm from SAIPA. I actually just want to touch on what Ncumisa said, which is we have got Facet in the room. We also, it's a pity the Deputy Minister had to leave. But when we are considering the empowerment of youth through internships, it's quite important that by the time they come out of that system, they are capable of doing something. It is true that when we are giving them a 12-month contract, they are not going to come up with a skill that will make them to be employable. Yes, there is still a lot of, there are very few businesses to employ them, but at the same time, they do not have opportunities to start their own entrepreneurial initiatives. So we do agree that we have got the majority that's going to be looking for employment. But the case is they are still not employable. We have had, I mean, at SAIPA, we have worked with FASSET, we have worked with Services CETA, where we have got learners that we have taken graduates that have been unemployed for over a year with honors, with BCom degrees, BSc degrees, and they haven't been working for a year, for at least a year. And you put them into an internship. You go back for another program and they say, sorry, you cannot come back again. They are still unemployed. So the reality is what we are giving them is not necessarily equipping them with the skills that they require to start their own businesses adequately or to be employable. Can we consider something that is going to be sustainable, that is going to yield results? We might be helping few people, but those will actually end up compounding. Because when they are employed or when they have started their own businesses, they will start employing more people. Right. So we really need to be considering something that we need to do. The other one goes to the 350 social grants. You cannot throw money into the problem. You are not solving the problem by doing that. And we need to be looking at what do we do with these millions of unemployed youth to ensure that they are able to do something instead of making them to be dependent on the 370 as it was increased by 20 rand.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for that contribution. I'm looking at the second row from the back. I'm seeing some young faces. Any contributions there? You want to say something? Okay, just hang on. Yes, we'll bring the mic back. If you can just bring it back down to, yes, there we go.
Good evening. My name is Mercy. I'm from MASA. Shout out to The Masa gang. You know, when I went to UJ, I'm finishing my training contract at Masa this year. But I was told that in the accounting finance industry, there's a 4% unemployment rate. So I was in the right place. And I don't know now. Because you asked when we got here, who knows someone unemployed. And if I just look in my family, it's quite a lot of people. And I'm like, maybe you should come to the finance industry. They said it is a 4%. What can you say to that stat? Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that. Okay. We're moving. Yeah. To the lady at the back, please. And then after you, I'll take just the contributions of our panelists before we continue with the rest of the room.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lefalani, preferred to be called Lefa. I am from ABASA. So I think talking about unemployment, I think I also want to tap into walking away with valuable experience as a graduate trainee myself. I'm 25 years old, so it's very difficult, especially when it comes to learnerships. One thing I've learned after 1 year of working, you really don't know anything still. So I think my issue comes to that part, because now, being in this 3-year graduate program, fortunately, you get to see that you really do need that 3 years experience for you to say you have learned the skill and you are certified as a CA or a CGMA, right? So I think my issue then comes to that. I think I also want to focus more on employment in the public sector, right? Where you find that, yes, after the internship, you give me 1 year internship, and then when I apply for a job, you're asking me for 3 years work experience. So those things just don't click. I think also in that space, there's a misalignment in government. And I think if we're going to look at unemployment rates, maybe they should also look at, tap into really restructuring their internship. And I think it's not even in the public sector only, just across the board, even in the private sector, because you do find internship for 1 year, but I think they need to work hand in hand on how to, better the skills and make sure they also provide quality youth employees and skills in the workplace. So I think, I just wanted to touch on that skills part. For us to effectively contribute to the economy, we definitely need the skills, but 1 year doesn't really cut it,
Thanks for that, Lefa. I'm going to give our panelists, I'm going to ask you, please keep it as brief as possible for me, because there were some questions asked. Ngumisa, let me start off with you.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. So I'll start with the youth.
Yes.
On the, 4%, so I don't think it's at 4%. So in my firm, we get a lot of BCom graduates that actually they don't have jobs, and they've been sitting for years not getting a job. And if you contribute to the SME space, so we're a small firm, we are able to take them, but the big corporates, you wouldn't take someone that just has a degree. So we're able to take them, we're able to support them and assist them. We recently had a candidate that passed his APC, and he was someone that came in the firm with no CTA, and he managed to complete it within the 3 years.
Sure.
So if we do support the SMEs, we are in a better space to support. Especially, it's us guys, it's the black guys that are struggling. We'll be able then to support them, and I don't think it's 4%. I haven't checked Stats SA, but it's definitely not 4% from what I've seen. And I agree with the sentiments of we need to ensure that the graduates that are leaving our firms they are quality that can contribute. Then there was the question on the private partnerships. What pillars should it have? So I think with any strategy, you need to be, what's the goal? What do we want to achieve? And then it makes it easier. So once we know this is our strategy, this is what we want to go, it's easier then to put in the pillars that will take us to where we want to, what is it that we want to achieve with those
All
private
right.
partnerships.
Thank you. Tembelani?
In actual fact, South Africa doesn't have a graduate problem. If you read the analysis of the report that came from Stats SA last year, and if you read the report that they released on the 6th of March, young people that are unemployed with matric, they're sitting at 33%. Those that don't have matric, they're sitting at 38%. So already you are looking at just around 70% of young people that are unemployed out there. Those that have a certificate beyond grade 12, they're sitting at 20%. Therefore, a graduate percentage of unemployed is less than 10%. 5 years ago, we were quoting it at 6.6%. As long as we concentrate on graduates, we are not moving the needle on the 85% of young people that are out there. The risk that we are managing today will still be out there because 80-90% of young people will still be unemployed. And they will not be unemployed, they will not be employable because the system as they sit today do not create anything for them. And it is this conversation where we are saying, I mean, when we read, I work for ECDC on youth employment. I received the first report, we analyzed it. I received the second report. We had to go back to the board and say, we can invest as much as we want. We will be servicing 6% of our problem. And the 94% will still be out there.
Sure.
So we had to go back, restructure. Now we are saying, we are not going to train graduates for unemployment. We are going to invest in projects. When we train them, we put them in projects. Where do we do that? How do we do that? That is the question. Now, now in these platforms, that's what we need to do. How do we link this training, these internships, into programs that we control? We do not create trainees that are qualified and expect the market to take them. How do we link the two so that we own that space as well? So that is the approach that we are taking to the market to say, create jobs where these kids will learn and in the process create entrepreneurship so that they create their own jobs. Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks for that. Herbert?
So, Kathy, for us, it's obviously, I think one point that was raised was around the quality of learnerships, where after learnership, what do we then do? You know, and one interesting point, I think it was around what our organizations such as ABASA are doing really to help in a number of these issues that have been raised. You know, the clock is moving, but not at a faster rate. And I can confidently say that organizations such as ABASA and Cornerstone, for instance, that looks at how do we deal with workplace transitions, where from as a graduate into the workplace, how do we then deal with your situation within the workplace, what you are dealing with, your KPIs and all that, but also with the end goal in mind of how do we intervene at that point, and not just coming up with a module, but really to look at your workplace and what is the end result that we hope to achieve, and work around to help you to transition better into those particular spaces. So by the time you leave, at least you actually know this, have the skill, and you have worked better in understanding more than just a tick box exercise where you sit with your line manager and ultimately it's about let's do appraisal. That doesn't really mean anything else. SME space, again for the last time, just for 30 seconds, it cannot be done without the collaboration of different stakeholders. And I can tell you right now that that approach itself will fail. We still have a problem of SMEs that get into a different courses by number of service providers. But when they leave, there is not even an accreditation around the work that has been done. What are those initiatives that we are going to put in place to partner with, whether it's ABASA, to partner with institutions of higher learning, whether it's GIBS and all that, so that at least even though we've taken through the journey, but at least they have something to show that verifies that in actual fact, there's recognition of prior learning. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that contribution, and I think that's actually really important. All right, final round of contributions. Yes, we'll start at the back.
Hi, I'm Indira Bagalu, and I'm from Cornerstone Performance Solutions. So I think, you know, just looking at, hearing what the DM said in terms of SSMEs contributing between 52 to 57% of GDP to, and you know, and their contribution to employment is so profound and so significant. And to a large extent, when one thinks about, you know, how do we educate the youth of South Africa, we very much are still working on the old school of skills development, you know, when skills development was initiated, when the agenda was initiated in 1994, to keep the programs very systemic towards corporate transition. But we're not doing enough to educate the youth in becoming entrepreneurs. So the corporate doors, there's just so much, you know, that one can open in terms of creating employment, but there's so much opportunity from an SME perspective, then one can most certainly leverage within corporate ourselves, SA. So let's talk about the BBB scorecard, okay? To a large extent, when we talk about learnerships, that actually drives vocational education is one of the components that's actually driven into corporate SA through the BBB scorecard. Then you have another very profound element within the BBB scorecard, which is called enterprise development. Now, within the context of enterprise development, one needs to ask the question, are corporate South Africans actually using that as a tick box exercise? Are we creating another element of compound interest where SMEs who actually had the ability to move into that crack are actually staying in that crack, and anyone else is not getting the opportunity to participate? So the question I ask is for corporate South Africa to be more transparent about enterprise development. Show a list of what opportunities there are within the context of enterprise development. Let skills development then be informed through those skills that are required for entrepreneurs to participate and to be mentored and to be coached within the context of corporate South Africa. And until we don't get that right and we drive education, vocational capability, funding, etc., through a scorecard, we will never ever leap to the extent that's actually required. We cannot see our young youth unemployed to the extent that they are. It is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that can be done.
All right.
But we need to move beyond the scorecard.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, sir, right next to you.
Oh, thank you very much. Hi, guys. It's David Ngobuka, candidate teacher here at University of Pretoria. I think postgrad and specialization, international. So, my question, stems out from the issue of how organized our administration is in regards with the maintaining and sustaining the SD gems. We did a project researching with Google Gemini nowadays, like now. So the SD gems, we were checking out now, monitoring government systems of monitoring. For instance, systems of monitoring in education. If government is opening new schools, like the specialization schools, we saw one in Shosha, the motor and mechanic. So how we gonna reach out to the particular same students who will be studying at those specialization schools? For instance, if now the curriculum comes to decide that the curriculum is about fixing a BMW, but we know what is less than 10% of South Africans are driving BMWs. The more most people are driving taxis, the industry, the grace industry, which it doesn't pay tax.
All right.
So the other one could be economic monitoring There are many that are going to come, the gems. The economic monitoring, for instance, the government is suggesting the two-pot system for the already baby boomers who already lived in the working place. So what about those who are still knocking at the doors of employment in the public sector? How they're going to reach out?
All right.
Also the issue of the gem is energy, also environment, employment, equity. Yeah, there are many sustainable development gems. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that point. I'm sorry I can't give you more time because we do need to wrap up the session soon. I'm going to come to this end of the room. I'm going to ask everybody, please keep your questions, comments precise. And yes, President, I will not be taking you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Emma. I'm the founder of MASA Auditors. I'm proud to say I've got my interns here and Messi as well. So I think for me, I agree with the sentiments around the room. I think one of the biggest things is it's good to have partnerships between big corporates and small businesses. I think the ABASA Business Forum have done very well in partnering, audit firms, smaller audit firms with the big ones. I mean, we were the beneficiary of that. But I think the very important thing is to always understand what we are trying to achieve. Yeah. Because, you have to have the criteria right. What are we trying to achieve? Because we've seen a lot of firms get swallowed eventually because they are dependent on this big brother. So where I'm going is we need access to markets as SMEs. It's a pity the chairperson of PIC is gone. I would have requested that. I mean, PIC owns pretty much every corner of the JSE. Yeah. But there is, I still want to see any black firm that signs a listed entity on its own. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going bread and butter. I know earlier you mentioned that we can't, you are avoiding talking about auditing dilemmas. But the reality is, it's probably the same for law firms. This is the struggle we have to go through. So we need access to markets. I mean, as black firms, like Numisa said, you go and get a trainee from the University of Limpopo, right? You're gonna have to invest in their CTA. It's expensive. You're gonna have to, invest in opportunity, cost lost because they are not in the office, they have to study, right? Productivity loss. So there is a ripple effect around, the cost of running a small practice or a small business. So all I'm saying is we need access to markets, and the relationships with big corporates have to be sustainable. It cannot be a tick box exercise around we're achieving some scorecard. I mean, the procurement amendment bill is it's gone to Parliament, it's going through the provinces. But I'm hoping that it's not going to be another one that's going to benefit bigger firms than small firms. So this is the challenge that we have. But, entrepreneurship also, just to conclude, it's not for the faint-hearted. So I always worry when people are saying, I will take my VSP and start a business. Yet they will give you the VSP, but they don't give you the skills on how to run a business. Because there's no school for entrepreneurship. Numisa will tell you, even in SCAs, we have to struggle like somebody in the corner there to understand how to register a business. Then there is safety issues. All these things are not written anywhere, but you have to learn them as we go along. So as a country, we need to invest in that as well, the education. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you for that. Please, if you can bring the microphone to the front.
Thank you very much, Kathy. My name is Tantaswa Fubwe, past president of ABASA and a founding CEO of Greatwell. Just 3 brief points for me. One, I think there's a lot that the private sector needs to do. And yes, there's a lot that the government must do. There's a lot that the private sector must do, especially big business. And we need to call big business to account. One, especially where there are black leaders, they should not be looking at empowering young people and employing young black people as risks. Because the language that we use is very important, and it yields results, and results that are related to risk. Two, as leaders, we need to transition from looking at the mere certificate that you bring with, but understand the passion that you have as a person.
Yes.
Because when that meets, you get to a sweet spot. And when you put people where they're totally passionate about, people will fly, and this economy will fly. But it needs the people to fly first. My third and last point. Thank you. My third and last point is, I think, Numisa, you said this, we need to go back to the fundamentals, right? And we are busy talking about the jails that we need to build more jails, we need to have more police, we need to, instead of fixing the fundamentals so that we do not need to have more jails and more jail capacity, can we, as the leaders of this country, start thinking about the macros of this country, what's going to make this country work, and what's going to make this country sustainable? Because if this country is not sustainable, it does not matter what you do, your business at some point will not be sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm going to take this young man, final contribution from him. There's the microphone, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lerato Sekgoto. I'm an intern at ABASA. As my question goes to the incompetence of the interns after finishing our programs. That takes me back to the convention when Dr. Indira mentioned the gap between the corporate and the institutions, our education system. So my question is, what is it can be done by the public sector and the private sector to reduce that gap between the graduates and the corporates to gain the necessary skills to be competent after completing our studies?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. We are out of time. We're completely out of time. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for the contributions that I can't get to. I'm going to ask our panelists to please respond and in it include your concluding remarks as we wrap up the session.
For me, it's we need to address the issues collectively of skills, lack of skill, and be intentional about it. More than just a tick box exercise. We also need to address the issues of funding. That seems to be problematic in trying to address all these other issues. But once again, in concluding, we cannot be geared always to be workers. What is your passion, to Tafazwa's point, what is your passion? And how do we best infuse that flame that burns you in order to convert that passion into something that can create jobs for also for other people? The last thing is that look around the system, the landscape. You are not an island. And how best all organizations, whether from Cornerstone, ABASA, Facet, how do we collaborate in order to impact at a larger scale more than just at a lower scale?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tembelani?
I think we need to identify where there are policy issues that we need to look at, and there's quite a few. When you talk about how we structure year internship, is it enough 1 year? How do we structure it? But how do we link that to policies that we implement when we procure these services from Abandwana? When it's what are the requirements? What are the minimum requirements? Because there's misalignment there. We create, but we do not want to consume. Because we set standard here, but we produce here, then who's going to take this product? So there's a need of conversation there. Secondly, I sat in a strategic planning session of an institution, and somebody from public works, and somebody from education, and somebody from health. They presented their projects for 24-25. Health presented 40 hospitals and clinics that are going to be built or maintained, or Department of Education, 80 schools. And if you look at that, why can't you link issues of employment, SME development to those programs?
Correct.
So that when I go to tender, I can always say I've got 200 kids that will then benefit directly from these internship programs. So there's misalignment there, and there needs to be a conversation on that. But lastly, Ms. Kevi, if you can just a minute.
Sure.
I went and I read the report of EPWC. ESG-focused institutional investment will be sitting at $33.9 trillion by 2026. I can tell you, if I were to ask in this room, how many people have read and understood the term ESG? How many? Look at that. Now, somebody says there's $33.9 trillion that is sitting in that. And the question is, if 90% of our young people don't even understand what we're talking about, how will we benefit out of that? Every district in this country was assessed, but 100% of the districts that have engaged don't even know the outcomes of the climate change assessment reports and the responsibilities they have. Now, whilst it is bad, but there are greater opportunities there. I mean, you look at the amount of waste that we are producing. 90% of that is being landfill. How do we tap into that and convert from landfilling to waste processing, so that we can start absorbing these young people as ESG auditors, as ESG compliance officers, as. I want to stand and ask the question, how many ESG auditors have you produced from your internal audit program? And a senior lecturer says, we have not even started. Actually, I want to go overseas and study the course from one of the universities because we are not producing them in South Africa. So there's a conversation that we need to have around these areas and identify those big projects that can turn around and can move the needle quite faster. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you for that. Mumisa?
Okay, I'll try to be brief. So I'll say it's three things. We need to look at the people. So there's people, the entrepreneur, how do we make that environment conducive? How do we make the internship to actually give us quality people that we need in the economy? And then there's processes. So the environment that we are working in as entrepreneurs, I think the lady from ABASA touched on it, is that it's all regulated, this requirement. There's tax that consultants don't know, or even as entrepreneurs that we don't understand. How do we make it easy? You know, there's a lot of allowances that we can get as entrepreneurs, but we don't know. I'll tell you, Section 12E says this. Like, what is Section 12E? So how do we make it easier for the people? Our processes as a country need to be more conducive. Then strategies. So we obviously need to have defined strategies, and in those strategies, you have the key roles and responsibilities to say, private sector, this is what you need to do. Public sector, this is what you need to do. But the most important thing that I'll always go back is going back to the fundamental to say, what is it that we want to achieve, and what's the stumbling block that's making us not achieve that? We're going to do a lot of initiatives, but we're not addressing the real root causes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists and for the contributions to the conversation. I guess perhaps part of the takeaway for me then is that in our own spaces where we do have the opportunity to influence and affect, how do we do that in the backdrop of this conversation. Understanding that, well, if you have young people that are saying, don't just give me 1 year, give me 3 years, how do I go motivate for that where I am, where I can influence something? There was a sentiment that was shared last week at a summit I attended, and it was about invention and innovation. And that one of the biggest struggles we have today is that we're always looking to invent something. Inventions don't come about every day, but innovations are what has led to, the clock bend, as we know, to being the smartwatch on your wrist. And so what are the innovations that we need to continuously be putting in place that can make life so much easier for all of us? And I think that's part of the solution here, is that how do we innovate on the challenges that we're facing, and perhaps not even look so much at what can be done on a very big scale, because unfortunately, BUSA was at that event, and I asked them that very question about what is being done to hold the private sector accountable. And this is including, and in particular, on the listed companies. And they said, well, they're disclosures. They're companies that are disclosing. And so the disclosures themselves might lead to, let's leave it there. So the point is that there are things that are within our control, and there are things that are not within our control. What do we do about those that we can actually control, that don't rely on a system, people bigger than where we are to make the difference? All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. We're going to move on to the next part of our program, which is going to be the introduction of awards. I'm going to invite those that are going to run the session for us to please come to the stage. If you're not sure, let me quickly just read out. It will be Mananana Mutimela and Lazola Maliti. Please come to the stage for the next part of the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Looking forward. Thank you. Let's talk, guys. Oh, okay. Stomach in.
To try and hide.
Hey.
Stomach in.
Thank you for reminding me.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Where's mine?
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sorry. How are you, Lazaro?
Yeah,
Thank you, man.
I need to take this thing.
Okay. I'm out of the books. Sorry. Oh. I left with yours, guys.
Thank you very much. And Kathy, where are you now? Oh, ngobelo green, kalu pink. Thank you so much. I think before we even go into here, I want to also protect my stakeholder here. A lot of questions around the matching. And I think we must remember that ABASA started the one leg of a balancing act. With, if you look at our MOI that we've signed with, not MOI, MOU, that we've signed with Facet, it not only upskills unemployed graduates and trains them in our 12-month program, which I believe will increase, but also there is a business empowerment program that is going to start. Because we're saying with Facet that exactly what you're saying, we can't produce these individuals that are supposed to go somewhere where they're going to be absorbed. But I must commend our partners, such as your Massas and your Chapus and your Azanias and ECDC, for coming on board and saying to ABASA, we are here to absorb these kids, but also to work with us to refine how we do this, to respond to some of the things that are raised here. And I know Godfrey's here, and speed dial with him. When something doesn't make sense, we ask as ABASA. We say, why are you just giving laptops and there's no insurance for these laptops? Why are we not thinking about the fact that some of these kids are going to take these laptops and not even come for the internship and leave? And Facet takes that input and says, we'll go back to the drawing board and figure out how we make sure that kids are actually coming here with discipline around this opportunity that's been created for them. And we have some interns that have worked in my office who have been so pivotal in giving feedback around how do we do this better. And this is what we encourage in the office to say, even as the beneficiaries, you must speak up around how would this be better for you. Now with that around speaking up, I'm going to introduce the next level. What we did building up to the budget speech, because the president doesn't just go to the budget speech, she makes sure that the organization is contributing, and we're talking about being active citizens. And young people need to be able to know that their voices are important, and that was the angle of this particular engagement. When the Minister of Finance asked us to give tips as a country towards the budget, ABASA took the submissions of all of our interns, and I want to congratulate all of them, because all of them submitted. They listened with discipline and contributed. And that's why, Massa, you have an employee who was mentioned by the minister, and actually that input is going to be taken into how we tax and make more money for the fiscal, which is important. But Ulazola, who is the deputy chair of the public sector committee of ABASA at a national level, is going to help me, well, over and above the fact that the minister read all of those, or his team, ABASA took the time to read all of your submissions as interns, and we have some very interesting awards. We know that the stipends are not enough. So those of you that will win, we might be taxed, ne? So over to you, my leader, just to announce the winners of the submissions.
Thanks, President. Good afternoon, evening, everyone. Guess there's no point in introducing myself then. But I'll just take 30 seconds, if you will, Sis Ngumi. We had a leadership strategic session last year where we had Mr. Freeman as one of our guest speakers. And he said something that has become a mantra, if you will, in my life, where he said leadership is an art of disappointing people at a level or at a rate they can tolerate. Now, having heard UDM speak, you know, we tend to sort of like pussyfoot around issues, whereas it has slowly turned us into a nation of sayers. You know, we feel like our biggest contribution is saying something as opposed to maybe just doing it. You know, sometimes what you are saying needs to be what you're doing, and then that will be your contribution. But yeah, without wasting further time, I think Madam President has mentioned Uhamogelo. The surname I might mess up, Mxhosa, so please bear with me. So it is very much an excuse. So Uhamogelo actually indicated that, you know, we need to consider increasing taxes on, you know, your Hubblies, your e-cigarettes and so on, which was quite, you know, refreshing of someone once again, you know, at that level. So there was a special acknowledgement award that we're going to be giving to Uhamogelo, if you will. Okay, and then, so of the over, I think, 2,000 submissions, we had deliberated on like the top 3. Well, it was supposed to be a top 5, but then we figured, you know what, because some of the, can you guys hear me? I might break into dance. Stop it, stop it. So in the top 3, so one of the key considerations that we took was the intern's understanding of the current affairs, and when they give a solution, we wanted someone who's going to give something that's feasible, and not just a solution that is, you know, again, tick box, check marks that, hey, we're in a crisis, load shedding, blah, 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 copy and paste from the internet. So we tried to avoid those guys, where the top 3, I must say, they really, really took their time, they applied their minds, and they gave us quite, you know, food for thoughts in their submission. So in 3rd place, we unanimously decided Umthokozisi Mazibuko's submission was quite enlightening, and we gave him the 3rd place. Is he here? Oh. Okay. Okay, so you're going to take a picture?
I can't take a picture by myself, but we have decided to give them a bit of, cash in the bank. So from Facet and ABASA, this is to our intern that came in the third place.
And in second place, Khanya Kutumela discussed 3 topics, and those were also quite extensive and touched on very, very critical issues: the energy crisis, municipality finances, and I think the third one was also on the tax revenue.
So he comes in at second, and he's from Limpopo, so hey!
And the overall winner discussed all the topics that were given by the Honorable Minister. Usikelela Biela was the overall winner of the submissions.
Hey, andiyazi Gauteng bethunana, guys, this is KZN, so if there are any KZN people in the room, that was our overall winner for this particular initiative. Thank you, my leader. We are done in terms of the awards.
Well, don't go too far because you are the last part of the program, madam. I think we've come to the end of what I think has been a really useful program, useful conversation, depending on what you do with it. Otherwise, you've wasted a good 2 hours of your time, and you could have just stayed home and watched Days of Our Lives. Do they still play Days of Our Lives? On that note, I think for the closing remarks, I'm going to hand over to the President.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I think in International Women's Month, it's lovely to be led by a woman on this conversation. So firstly, I want to thank you. And I know we pay you to do that, but you are beautiful, and we also want to appreciate you. So we've just got a token of appreciation for you from ABASA in Women's Month.
Guys, I'm sorry, you don't get anything.
And also in that very same spirit, we have one of our Business Forum members, member in good standing. The chairman of the board was here. I don't know where he's gone now. But the incoming CEO of Chapo, first woman CEO of Chapo, was on our panel. And we just felt that as ABASA, I know we've got gifts for all the speakers, but I think we really want to acknowledge our members in good standing who are also making sure that the women agenda is taken seriously. And congratulations to you on your appointment. So I just wanted to start with that, Malibongwe. The conversations for us as ABASA are really refreshing. And I think it confirms that the things that we do, sometimes people may not understand why we do them. But the engagements of this nature show that we are listening to our stakeholders. And the way in which we listen to you may not always be on a platform like this, but through the engagements we're doing behind the scenes, there's a lot of work that's been done. And I want to thank Facet particularly for trusting us with this particular initiative. I know that there are so many other people that are doing it, but also being open to the engagements on how we improve. And I'm gonna sleep easy, knowing that everything that was raised here, we have discussed, and I know that you're taking it into your meetings to see how we can improve and really respond to the real crisis in our country and in our particular sector, to refine an internship program and programs that we do for impact and real impact. So thank you very much to Facet on that note. I want to thank Gibbs. This is now our home. So thank you very much. ABASA will be coming here from time to time. I have interns, and maybe when they do their training, because I think we're going to refine the way we even do the training, that it won't be just the first week or two or a month, but to have continuous engagements and continuous engagements with our stakeholders. I mean, we've got SEMA that is here, we've got SAIPA that's here, we've got SAIGA that's here, SAICA, and all of those, to make sure raising awareness of what the market needs from these unemployed graduates, and how do we design programs that are linking them to be able to be employable in those particular sectors and in those particular designations. So thank you very much to our stakeholders that are here. I want to thank my interns that are in the room. Hi, Shine. Because ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, putting this together, it was really through the leadership of Uviwe, the interns of ABASA were running around and making sure that we could pull this off. So thank you very much for being open to learn and to showcase what ABASA can do. I take the notes of yourself, Emma, as well. ODM left, but the recording is there. PIC must come on board. And I know that it was a conversation that we had in our operational meeting with the chairs of portfolios. So the leadership development program is pushing a program that says, how are we looking at organizations like the PIC when there are opportunities there, either for work, directorship, and all of that, it channels into ABASA that our members are actually considered, because we are a pool of black excellence and we should have our people there. So thank you for that. We will be following up on the DM. To all of you that are here, hey, hold on. Intsikelelo zam, Nkosi yam. To the founding president of ABASA. Cela nimphakamele man, President wam. President Jeff. Yeah, depending on where you look at. Dr. Jeff. I think my president, the DM, articulated it very well. We would not be here if it was not for your foresight and for your sacrifices. So we stand on the foundation of those that have experienced a more difficult time than what we see now. We are very privileged in this room. And we don't take for granted what you sacrificed for us to sit here as black professionals and in this excellence. And I hope that it is a dividend, that even when it was painful to lead in your time, these are the fruits and the dividends of your contribution to our profession and our country. Thank you very much. And I want to recognize my president number 13. We are numbered. There are books that record this. And founding president of Women of ABASA. So as we celebrate in this month, we also celebrate those that have paved the way for us in making sure that women are not a footnote when we talk about things in our country. Thank you, President Fugu. And last but not least, to the chairman of the National Council of ABASA, Mr. Philip Rachale. Thank you very much. I know you had to leave a presidential Indaba to be here, but your commitment to ABASA and making sure that we are able to do all of this. Thank you very much for your contribution to the organization. Ladies and gentlemen, to all of you, membership fees. It's very easy, technology. But thank you for being here. It means a lot. We could not do this without you. Thank you very much. Oh, now my speakers, I do have gifts. So if you can just come up and we can take a picture and I can just appreciate you. Thank you very much to the ECDC. Putemelani, I think our partnership with you, Hloni, uyathanda ke umculo ndithetha, is going to be a benchmark of how we do this internship program. They have absorbed, they have taught us, they have said we can do this better. And for him to fly all the way from the Eastern Cape to be here for this conversation, I think it says a lot about the partnerships that we're going into. So thank you very much. Oh, funa ne FASSET. Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. And please enjoy your evening. Go well, be safe. There are refreshments when you go outside. Please take your time and network with everybody and enjoy yourselves.